call this regular council meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. Lanier, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do you remain standing for a moment, please? Heavenly Father, as the ruler of all the seasons, we thank you for autumn, for the first touch of frost and the coolness in the air that gives us new energy. Thank you for the colors in the trees that show us all your divine creativity. For the falling leaves, we thank you, the changing colors in the fields, and we thank you for our fall harvest. As you transform the earth, we thank you for this change of seasons, which shows us the miracle of the circle of life. Bless all of us here tonight. Help guide us in our decisions. We ask for all of this in your holy name. Amen. Okay, Kathy, roll please.
Carter. Here. Walter.
Here.
Epperson.
Here.
Barstow.
Here.
Hampshire.
Here.
Gaelic.
Here.
Lee.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum present. First thing on the agenda tonight is citizens' comments. And I think we have one young lady. Scott, if you bring Emily Butler in, please. Thank you, sir. Hi.
Hello,
I'll need your name and address for the record, please.
Emily McDonald Butler, 7357 Summit Road Southwest. I'm just coming in tonight to resign my position on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I wanted to thank council personally for the appointment. I loved it. I loved Pataskala. Sorry. Unfortunately, I am getting divorced and have to sell my house, so I'll be back. Keeping my nice apartments for people like me in the future. And thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this, and I wish you nothing but the best in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for your service, and we'll see you again, I'm sure.
You will.
Okay. Good night. Thank you. We'll have Scott check one more time, since I have the clipboard here.
No one else?
Yes, sir, your name and, oh, okay, that's Scott.
Just me.
The plaid threw me off. All right, introduction, discussion, and approval of consent agenda matters.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Epperson. Kathy, when you're ready.
Carter.
Yes.
Walter.
Yes.
Epperson.
Yes.
Barstow.
Yes.
Hampshire.
Yes.
Gaelic.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Okay, consent agenda passes. On to reports, I'll keep my remarks to see if anything falls through the cracks. I'll pick up on, I know Tim's got a lot of good stuff, and I'll just pick up if he doesn't mention a few other things. Mr. Barstow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you see on the agenda, and as promised from last meeting, I am proposing the following amendment to Council Rule 5.02. So, I can read it into the record.
Yes, please read that for us.
Sure. So I'm amending Rule 5.02 to say as follows: any person may request that a matter of business be placed on the agenda, provided sufficient notice is given to either the mayor, the city administrator, or the clerk of council. All proposed agenda items must be delivered to the clerk of council no later than 10 a.m. on the Wednesday immediately preceding the meeting.
So that's how it's amended. What word or verbiage is in there now?
The major change, there's a couple of just style that really had no effect on the rule itself, just some style points. But the major change is right now, the agenda items are due to the clerk at 4 p.m. on the Wednesday preceding the meeting. And Ms. Hoskins and I have been talking about this. I've talked to Mr. Hicken, and there's been a suggestion to make it, get the agenda out quicker and make it a little easier on the administration to move that time up from 4 p.m. I proposed 10 a.m. I'm not fixed on 10 a.m. So council rules are such that we can discuss this evening, and then we can, well, my motion's still out there. We can discuss it, and then we don't vote on it up or down, whether it's amended or not, until next meeting. That's council rules.
Okay.
So
Open it up for discussion.
Well, I guess one thing that I'm trying to figure out, I've talked to the directors about this. 4 o'clock seems to work best for them. I'm trying to figure out the impetus to move it all the way to 10, or frankly, to move it at all. Sometimes, there's a lot of stuff that happens, and I want council to know that, you come in on a Monday and stuff happens from over the weekend, you're doing a lot of different things. Moving it to either 10 or noon means probably the directors are gonna be working on it on Tuesday. They're still tying stuff up, they're still fixing stuff up. As soon as it comes out, it's essentially stale or begins to get stale after that. Even now, we do have instances where reports don't get in for a variety of reasons. Hopefully, we would stop any of those reasons that are not legitimate, but illness or, I came in, I was gonna do it on Wednesday, and I came in and I had 11 people demand that I come out and look at the concrete that was poured, those type of things where the directors are responding, and it's not, it's all of them. They all have stuff that pops up. That 4 o'clock deadline for me seems pretty reasonable. This is a request that's come across before. Came across, I know it came, at least was discussed, when I was on council. It's never reached the level of a rule amendment. So, I don't know, I told the directors last Friday, they should feel free to speak up and provide comment to council. I think that, again, I'm kind of back to what is the impetus? What has happened to make the decision to move it backwards? And I don't know, so.
Mr. Walton?
So, Tim, my input would be two things. One, deadlines are, I think they are addressed, by myself at least, deadlines are, if it's at 4 o'clock, I'm gonna make 4 o'clock. If it's at noon, I'm gonna make noon. If it's at 10, I'm gonna make 10. So, that information, I don't know how much information is changing between, let's say you start on this on Tuesday, and Tuesday at, whenever you're starting on the report versus when are you gonna start on it, Wednesday morning? Because I'm seeing your logic, I follow your logic, that stuff comes up. That stuff comes up no matter when the deadline is, quite frankly. The impetus for me, and I think for everybody else, is to get these council packets early enough that gives us enough time to actually ask some questions, to maybe shorten some of the meeting times and maybe get some information, get some dialogue between you and a council member or the council member and the director. If we're getting them on Thursday night instead of Wednesday night, that's just, it gives you Friday and half a day Monday to try to figure something out if there's a question, if there is one. That's, I think, the impetus, for me at least, is to try to get it just a little bit earlier. And your point's right. I mean, things change every day out here. I mean, you could make it Thursday at 10 if you wanted to. There'd be more information on everybody's reports. You could make it Tuesday at 10. It's just, there's stuff that changes every day. So I think everybody, at least from my point of view, council understands that not everything's in that report. It can't be, because something happened on Wednesday, something happened on Thursday, and something happened on Friday, most likely. That's my opinion, too.
No, I mean, and to answer Mr. Higgins' question, I mean, I proposed the rule change, but I agree with Mr. Walther. I mean, for me, so sometimes, if it doesn't, if the packets aren't due until Wednesday at 4, as it is now, I probably won't see them until Thursday, depending on what my day's going on with my day. I may not see it until Friday morning. I may just not have an opportunity to see it until then. And then I'm trying to, if I have questions or have issues, I understand the report's not gonna be complete. I understand that there's gonna be things that are gonna be different. The directors can always supplement that. But the goal, I think, is to try to get it pushed out to council earlier on Wednesday, so there is some opportunity. Again, I'm not fixed on 10, I just put 10 o'clock in there, because I'm a lawyer and I start with the position that's my best position and go from there, okay? That's what happens with 3 years of law school. So, I'm not dying on the 10 o'clock hill. If somebody has a better time and council has a consensus on that's fine. But right now, 4 o'clock's basically the end of the day, more or less. And so, if that's just the suggestion, is to get it out so it gets out earlier. They come to Kathy, and then they have to be put out on the website by Jess. So there is some delay sometimes in getting those things out. There is some time lag. So I understand that. And again, I agree with Mr. Walther. The deadlines are deadlines. If you tell me that my deadline is, I deal with deadlines all the time. It's my deadline, that's my deadline. So, that's.
Mrs. Carter?
My question is there a way to get it published sooner without necessarily making it due so much earlier from the directors? I mean, so from how I understand it now, everything's submitted to Kathy, then back to Jess, then back to Kathy. Why are there so many steps? Why can't we just submit to Jess and have her put it on the website?
I think that could be done. I think I know there's another piece to this, and that was playing with the idea of having the directors send the reports directly to council members. I mean, having had the unique position to have been, and ask yourselves how many, Mr. Barstow's example is a good one, that maybe if he has court on Thursday, he's not gonna be able to look at it till Friday. I personally looked at them on Friday, I read every one of them. Looked on, sometimes on Friday, sometimes on Sunday, sometimes on Monday. So, but I think that could, I mean, we kind of get into the impetus for the question, which is, I don't know, maybe back to Kathy about whether it's the earlier deadline. How does that help the process? What is it because at 4 o'clock, if there's a missed thing, it can't go out till the next day?
Well, if I receive the majority of the stuff within the last half hour before packets are to go out, it becomes quite a rush. It's difficult. Jess has to do what she has to do to put it on the website, send the links to me. I think it's important that both of us probably get it at the same time. Give us a chance to look over it, look for any typos, that type of thing. But if the stuff doesn't come and Jess has to put all that on at the last minute on Wednesday and then get the links out and still leave the building when she's supposed to leave the building, that can be difficult for her.
I want to say that not to burnish the finance flame too much, but Mr. Nicholson sends out his report to council independently. He sends it out as an email. And so it's already being done by one of the directors. So it can be done. And in that report, he includes any legislative, if he's going to have a resolution or an ordinance on that's going to pertain, a supplemental or something like that. So it's being done. That's certainly fine, because the report has a lot of that information. I mean, the reports may not have the verbiage of a resolution or an ordinance, but it's gonna have a signal to council member that Scott's proposing some sort of ordinance to do something that's come up from planning and zoning or BZA or what have you, so, or that Lanier's got a resolution on for appropriation or purchase of equipment or something like that. So if you have a question about that, you can at least get in touch with them or shoot an email, so. We wouldn't necessarily need to have the language of the ordinance, we would just have the alert that, you know, this is happening and I have a question about it, or, you know, where's this coming from, so.
Mr. Lee?
Yeah, I think that, a couple points, I like Mrs. Carter's suggestion, I was thinking the same thing about maybe there's an extra layer in here that we don't need, maybe the reports can just come to us directly, if that would, that might just help with the whole process, not be so bogged down, I guess. The second thing is I know we talked last meeting about tweaking our agenda to kind of shorten up the meetings. I just wonder if maybe we come back to this once, if we do tweak it, because I think it's gonna be important that, I think we're gonna be relying more on the reports if we're not getting as much of a director's report, if any, if there's not legislation. So I wonder if we should see if we actually do change that, A, and B, if we do it, how that flows. Because if we move up the timeline, like, you know, there's not as much time for us to get or there's more time for us to get the information, but there's more time for more things to happen that might not make it on it, that would affect how a changed agenda would flow on that Monday night, if that makes any sense at all.
No, yeah, no, I just put to Mr. Hicken, I mean, as I say, we have a director who puts out his report, that Mr. Nicholson puts the report out by email to council members, usually before the agenda appears. It usually comes, Jamie, usually on, sometimes late on Tuesday, early on Wednesday, is typically when his, so I think that the directors, I would put that to Mr. Hicken, maybe talk to the directors to see if they could do that. So it just comes directly to us, and then we already kind of know what's gonna be discussed, what's gonna be on the agenda, because that'll have the legislative proposals in there, in that report, or it should. And then we won't need to see the actual formal agenda necessarily if we kept the same time frame. And then, as Andy said, that our concern, I think the concern from council, what I've heard, is the time necessary to get the report, take a look at it, and then reach out to the director or to you, Mr. Pickett.
If I don't know, I've told them all that, they can all feel free to speak up, so,
Yeah, just hang on one second, I wanna get one more council member.
I'm sorry, I didn't know there was
wishes to
another
speak.
council.
That's fine, and then we'll go to the directors. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just in listening, obviously not being here a long time and having the experience that some of the seasoned council members do with this. For me, much like Mr. Hicken, I go through mine on Fridays and over the weekend, so either way will work for me. However, in listening, I think Mr. Barstow is leading on to something pretty good with, if a director is done with their report and they're able to send it out before the deadline, have them send it out, and still push it to Kathy and Jess as needed, but maybe the compromise on that would be to move that time, say 2 o'clock or whatever, so that the end of their Wednesday isn't so hectic and rushing around. Or in the instance that Mr. Hicken stated, where a director may have something going on and they can't get it out early, they know they at least have that deadline to get it to Kathy or Jess.
Yep, some
One
input.
thing, maybe we should discuss with Mr. Zetz how much time he needs when he gets a request for a resolution or an ordinance to review it, so he's also.
My Tuesdays are very, very busy with Pataskala work, and we'll get it done. I guess I'll just chime in for what I'm thinking when I hear you saying it. My thought is, it's not so much the deadline that things get to Kathy, it's the deadline the council receives them. So why don't you put a deadline on when you'll receive it and then back the process from there? And then let us figure out when we have to get the stuff to whoever, so you get it by 3 o'clock on Wednesday. And I'm just, literally, I'm thinking as I'm hearing you guys talk, I mean, it doesn't, because you don't care when we get our stuff done, you just care when you get it. But
That's a lot of common sense.
Sorry.
That's also where I'm kinda going with, like, if the director's done with theirs on Tuesday, and they can push it out,
Right.
you know, but they
Yeah.
got also till
Right.
that deadline to get to Kathy if things come up.
Chris?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to give my opinion on it. Usually, like Mr. Hickman was saying, I come in Monday to deal with whatever fires came around on the weekend, work on the report Tuesday, and if I've got legislation that I need Brian to review for me, coming in, having it all done at 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning could be kind of a tight squeeze to get it all in there. And I don't even have as many moving parts as Alan or Scott do in the amount of things they're trying to track. Like Mr. Walter was saying, deadline is a deadline, and whatever it is, I'll meet it. But if I do get to speak, my opinion, it would be to maintain the 4 o'clock Wednesday deadline, just because of all the other things that are going on during the day outside of the council report. I think it would just make it easier for me on my side of things.
Alan?
You know, I can't speak for when they go out. I know I've missed that 4 o'clock deadline sometimes. Usually it's not intentional, it just kind of happens with things that are going on. Seems like to me if we moved it up a little, maybe to make Kathy and Jess's lives a little easier, you know, maybe shot for a 2 or a 3 o'clock so that they're not scrambling at the end of the day, so it doesn't put us in a bind where we're trying to get in and accomplish, you know, other meetings and resident issues and the likes. Maybe that'd be a decent compromise.
Lanier?
Hitting the deadline for 4 p.m. is very difficult for me, just because I'm not just in the office. I'm always outside. I'm doing outside work half the time. But a deadline is a deadline. I've already discussed with Mr. Hicken. You guys change a deadline, I'll meet the deadline. But 4 o'clock on Wednesday is prime for me.
Jamie? You do your own thing anyway, so.
I do my own thing.
Scott?
I would agree with these gentlemen. Excuse me, it's, you know, you come in on Monday, what fires are going on, touch base with staff, you have meetings, sometimes that's Monday, so now we have Tuesday to do it. Things come up that if it takes it sending to council, as soon as we get it done, it goes out to council, I'm happy to do that, because right now it's, all of them are collected, then distributed, that if we were to put them, hey, I got mine done, send it out, we've checked that box. All the council, we can copy Kathy and Jess on it, everybody who needs it has it, and it's done, it's out.
Any more input from council? Mr. Barstow, back to you, sir.
Well, I mean, yeah, so, as I said, I'm not dying on 10 o'clock in the morning, that's just what I picked. In talking to Ms. Hoskinson about it. So, I mean, if I wanna, I can easily ask to, or amend that to 2 p.m. I think is that, that's what I heard, the suggestions from the directors, that 2, that's to get agenda items to Kathy. The report, if the report's already been sent out on Tuesday evening at 4:30, then that's already been taken care of. It's out. Council has that. I think we can keep track of that. So that we don't have to do a rule change on when a director's report goes out. That there's no specified time, I don't think, in the rules for that. So
That's an,
Yes.
that's an interesting point. I assumed that the deadline, included the director's reports. If the position is, sorry about that, if the position is that we need to get the ordinances and the resolutions and basically what the construct of the agenda is earlier in the day, and that's what we're talking about, then I'm much more akin to that. What I've heard is a hybridization, by the way, and I think we've all heard it. I don't want to speak for everybody, but that hybridization being a slightly earlier time so that Jess and Kathy aren't put under the gun on Wednesday with a direct distribution to council people when the report is finished from the director.
Mr. Lee?
Yeah, to echo what Tim's saying, and I'm just throwing this out there for discussion, I'd like to hear the director's input on this, but if we went to 10 a.m. as proposed for the agenda items, but the report itself, I wouldn't even mind end of the day on Thursday on that, or even Friday morning, because if something changes in those 48 hours, we'll be more prepared to read that report over the weekend and be ready for Monday. But what if we did something hybrid? I think is the best word. I've heard that summed up. Agenda items by 10 a.m. Wednesday and reports by 4 p.m. Thursday. I mean, how do you guys, I'd like,
I guess for me, I'll chime in on this. I'm probably guilty of it. Most of the time, I'm bringing mine in at 8 o'clock at night is when I would do mine. I do a lot of my paperwork at nighttime. So I normally give my stuff to Jess and Kathy 8 o'clock in the morning half the time. So a 4 p.m. or I guess a 10 a.m. on Thursday for me would work best to give my direct report. And I don't mind sending my report once complete directly to everyone. But if I had something on the agenda, a Wednesday timeframe would work for me because half the time it would go to Brian first. And then once he sends it back, it's reviewed, we send it right out. So I guess that's my input.
Chris?
Thank you, Mayor. To echo what Tim thought, I thought we were talking about the same thing, where the reports and the agenda items would all be due. As far as the agenda items, knowing if I have a resolution and what the number is going to be, meeting 10 o'clock on Wednesday is not a problem to do that. The substance of the report is what I'm worried about getting done, and the actual resolution itself. But with the agenda items, I personally don't have a problem hitting them early. But again, I don't have as many moving parts as some of the rest of you.
Alan?
It'd still be easier for me if it was at least maybe noon on Wednesday for the legislation, and then if I agree with the copying all of council on the reports, and at 4 o'clock on Friday or Wednesday is still no problem for the reports in general.
Scott?
I concur.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking, you know, if you did something around noon, then you'd have the rest, you'd be done to go to lunch. Kathy would come back from lunch and finish it by 4 o'clock. Is that?
Noon would be great. That gives us the titles for the ordinances to prepare the agenda, get the agenda out to the mayor and to Mr. Hickens for approval of that agenda. That would be great.
Council input?
is that just on the agenda items, or are we talking agenda and reports by noon on?
We're talking
My main
agenda.
concern is the agenda items.
Yes.
Because I think the reports, the later the better almost.
The
Really?
reports, that's
Okay.
up to you guys how you wanna do that.
Andy?
The agenda items we need so that we can prepare the agenda and get that out, so the mayor and Mr. Hicken have time to review it.
Just the agenda. Andy?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm hearing from Kathy and from the directors is if the agenda and the ordinances could be moved up to the noon time frame, and I've heard a couple different times, but noon, so Kathy can get those out. If we can get reports directly from the directors, and I'd still vote for them to be on Wednesday. There's a lot of information in there that you gotta go out and actually see it to see what what you guys are talking about. It just gives you some extra time. If we're picking up packets Thursday night, it doesn't give you a whole lot of time to get through the reports and understand what's going on and even ask any questions until, say, Monday. And I think that was the idea of this, was to try not to have questions, not to have as many of those questions for council, but to have a lot of those resolved already, resolved through either talking with Tim or the directors directly, and that gives us enough time to really get that done. That's if the directors are okay, I would personally think that it'd be a great solution if Kathy could get the ordinances and everything by noon, and the reports are emailed out to council by 4 o'clock on Wednesday, and then they go into the packet that's out when Kathy puts the packet out. That seems like a great solution.
Mrs. Carter?
I guess I was just, something that Mr. Walter said just prompted me. Are we still printing packets for people?
I'd get a hard copy.
Yep, absolutely, I get a hard copy.
For that gets a paper packet, we have to have 2 packets available at the council meeting according to our rules.
Okay. I guess, I mean, just curious as to why we are still printing packets for people when everything's electronic.
So I'm doing 6 packets printed.
Because I go through this at this actual meeting, so.
So do I, but I printed at home with my stuff, so. That's what my point was.
So just so you know, half the time I'm in my truck and I don't have my, I don't wanna read it on my phone. So if I have a packet of information with the stuff that the directors supply to us to review for ordinances, I don't have to print stuff on, different, variable prints. So, it basically is something that goes in my truck and I use it to, when I got 15 minutes extra here and there, that's fine.
How
Same
much-
for me, only I just print it myself. That's why I was asking.
How much
why
time
we're
do you spend
spending
printing
time
up
printing
the
packets
packets?
here is
The
what I'm
printing isn't so bad now. The biggest issue is getting the ordinance numbers with the title to add to the agenda so that you and Mr. Hicken can review that. So there's time for that. Because sometimes you may be out of the office, another problem, a ribbon cutting, any number of things, that we have to wait till we get the approval to go move ahead with the agenda. So that would solve a lot of problems.
I feel like that puts pressure, or if that's the right word, a question back on Brian as to whether or not he's okay with that, because he'll be the most effective. That legislation sometimes is incredibly complex, it has to be written. I'll just ask it straight up.
Yeah, I guess outside of the reports, don't forget, I literally look at everything and make revisions of almost everything that's on the agenda before it goes. I have no problem with whatever the deadline is. I guess I'm gonna bounce back to folks like Alan. I know him and I sometimes trade emails early on Wednesday mornings about last pieces of legislation to get things done. I will have to make sure that we back that timeline up so we know when things are due and we give legal counsel and its fine department enough time to be able to do it, that's all. That's an internal working, thing we'll deal with internally, that's all.
I will say we're down from 17 packets to 6 now, so we're making progress.
So that's 2 for the public and 4 for
Yes.
Andy, myself, and
I get one, but
Mr. Lee.
I could go with or without it. If it's easier for you, you can, all I need is
Now,
an
our
agenda.
rules gives council the ability to request a paper packet. There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm just
That's
thinking
in our
time.
rules, actually.
I'm just thinking time constraints, how long does it take to print 6 copies?
Depends on what we have. If we're doing something, like the employee handbook, that takes some time.
Gotcha.
And other times it's not very long. But, it just depends on what's coming across the table.
Understood.
I would also say that if we ever were to get to, and I'm not necessarily advocating it, because rules do state that packets can absolutely be printed and at a request. If we ever get to the electronic copies, I don't know why the 2 that were left couldn't be printed on Monday. I mean, I don't know that the printing is.
Yeah, and again, for me, having this copy here is fine, and I read it electronically, but having this to run the meeting is huge, and that could be printed on Monday.
And no one should feel bad about that.
Right,
That,
yeah.
that is spelled out in our rules, that
Sure.
council can request a paper copy.
Any other input? Okay, back to you, sir.
I'm going to withdraw this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
That's all I have.
Mr. Zetz,
I have nothing.
Mr. Hicken.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got a couple of things. Groundbreaking for Shank Racing took place last week, right, Mayor?
Wednesday?
Yeah. We got lots of nice things said about us. Thank you very much to council for speeding that up. I realize it's rare and it probably would never happen again, but I appreciated it, and so did they. Our charter commission met, and in case anybody doesn't know, the Barb Triplett, who was the chair, had to leave because she had to leave the city. But Stephanie Doherty is stepping into that role. They are through pretty much the entire charter. They didn't really tackle, sections 1 and 2, and those have to do with, the reason for being and stuff like that, so I don't think that they will change that. They need to have a final meeting where they go back through all of the changes, because there are a couple items that I don't think they came to, agreement on, simply because there were several nights where there might have been 2 absences, and they didn't, my gut feeling is they didn't wanna vote or confirm what they were going to choose without the full body there. And so I think that's what the next meeting will start to do, and a review of all the changes. There's a couple of things that are floating out there that I have added late, nothing big, but, those also haven't been. For instance, I added late all the different plans that the city has. And the comprehensive plan, the disaster plan, the Parks and Recreation emergency plan, and a requirement to review those on a 5-year basis. I added it late because I wanted to get input from the Licking County Emergency Management Agency and make sure that what I asked for was within the realm of due diligence or whatever. Other than that, I want to touch base very, very quickly on Mayor's Court. Mayor's Court is progressing nicely. Kip Kelsey asked me specifically to thank the police officers who have begun to take the task of enforcing those the rules and stuff to heart, and so we are seeing more people. I think after the first of the year, they will resume a regular Thursday schedule in some form. We're having a few more trials and a few other things, but for a long time, that entire thing was stood down. The new Mayor's Court clerk is doing well, and as a result, I think that we're seeing cases again, we're hearing cases again, and that means that it's becoming self-sustaining again, I hope. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anything for Tim? All right, Mr. Nicholson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just did a report earlier. A couple things of note, or one primary. We begin negotiations with the FOP and OPPA tomorrow for wages for 21 and 22. For the new members, we typically do 3-year contracts with all our unions. The steel workers entered into a 3-year agreement for wages in the whole agreement. With the FOP and OPBA, which is the sergeants union, we agreed to a 3-year agreement, but a reopener for years 2 and 3 on wages. As you recall, there was a police levy on the ballot, and without that, knowing how that was going to end up, both sides felt that it was best that we stop at the first year and then sit down at the table again once we had better information. So the city administrator, myself, Jeff Stankunas, who is our legal counsel, Bruce and Mike will be joining me tomorrow. I will meet with the reps from the FOP to talk about where we go for 2021 and 2022. And that I won't be able to give you much updates until we come with something that we'll bring to you in executive session to discuss. So that's kind of where we're at with that. I did want to thank everyone for last week. I thought the budget session went well. I appreciate all the positive feedback. I've begun to make a few of the changes that Tim mentioned my whiteboard with the list. I'm starting to work through those changes now. Hopefully I'll have that wrapped up here in the next couple of days so I can start rolling that up into the legislation and get that ready for next meeting. We will be presenting that at the mid-October meeting, which, if all goes according to plan, that would get us done before Thanksgiving with the third reading and adoption at that time. So we're right on track, right on schedule, so we're progressing nicely. And that's all I have.
Anything for Jamie? Okay, Chris?
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to hit a couple things out of the report. Hydrant flushing went without too much of a hit last week. We did end up with 6 hydrants that are out of service out of almost 600, so it's not too bad. All the ones that are out of service have been tagged and the fire department's been notified. Systems team is gonna work on getting those repaired as quick as possible, and as they come back online, we'll let the fire department know that as well. We participated in some PFAS sampling. You may remember that PFAS are those Teflon chemicals that they do not break down, and they're basically everywhere on the planet. They estimate 99% of Americans have them in their blood, just from how prolific they are and how long they last. So the EPA did some sampling across the state to see if it was an issue in Ohio, to try and come up with a limit for how much PFAS you can have in your water, and we were a part of that. Our results came back, and no PFAS were detected in our water supply. And the test goes down to 5 parts per trillion of water, parts PFAS to water. So it's a really good thing. I'm really surprised that the results came back the way they did because of how prevalent this is in the environment. But we have a nice, clean, protected water source right below our feet, so that was good to hear. The last thing I want to talk about was COVID-19 wastewater sampling. So there's a program through the state with the EPA and the Department of Health. They're going through Ohio State University, and they are looking for RNA, which is DNA for a virus. They're looking for the genetic material in the wastewater stream. Some of the benefits of this kind of testing are you'll find out about asymptomatic people who are not going to go to the doctor. It'll show up in the wastewater stream. And also, you don't have to wait for somebody to get sick and then go to the doctor. So you get your results about 4 to 7 days quicker than relying on the clinical results. What it doesn't do is tell you you've got 15 people infected in the city. That's not how it works. But we'll get a baseline number, and then you'll see the trending either going up or coming down. The program is 2 samples a week. We collect the samples, mail it off to the lab. They get the numbers turned around in about 3 to 4 days, and they will post those numbers on the State of Ohio Coronavirus website, coronavirus.ohio.gov. If there is a spike in those trends of significant value, they will not wait for the website to post the numbers. They will call the health department, the administration, and myself to have a meeting and let us know what they're finding in the samples. But it's a pretty cool project to be a part of. We are the smallest community that is involved with this, but they were excited that we have no industrial waste in our wastewater stream. We don't take septic trucks in from other areas, so it's a really clean household representation of what's going on in the system. So I wanted to get that out there, just to let everybody know that we're going to participate in that. Testing should start next week. Outside of that, I don't have anything. Be happy to answer any questions.
Anything for Chris? Of those 6 hydrants, anything have to be dug up, or are they just
It
valves?
should just be internal parts. We take them apart and put them back together.
Thank you.
Sir.
Alan?
Thank you, Mayor. Just one thing to mention tonight, the Zoom Car Wash Development Project, which is on Broad Street, just east of Taylor Road, will be starting this week. As part of that project, there will be a left turn lane going in on Broad Street. So we should see some maintenance of traffic being set up for that project, probably this week, maybe next. So it'll be similar to what's out here in front of the building with a lane shift. It might be a little narrower out there, so we've given them a conditional approval on that maintenance of traffic. So if you hear any issues or see any issues, let me know and we'll have them change that up. I just want to give you a heads up that's starting. Other than that, I have nothing to report. Happy to answer any questions.
Are they using any of our officers for traffic control?
Not planned. It'll be similar to like what's right out here in front of the building, where it's just gonna be a lane shift using the berm and adjusting the striping. We've let them do it a little narrower to avoid having to remove as much striping and put back as much striping, to be a little cleaner. That's where we could see problems if there would be any.
And that's totally responsibility of the car wash, right? They're paying for that turn lane.
That is correct. We'll be inspecting it. They are paying for it and constructing it.
Very good. Thank you. Anything for Alan? Yes, sir. Did you have anything?
I do, but.
Okay. Mrs. Carter?
I was just curious if you've had any feedback from residents in that area, or have you had any complaints about that going up?
I know that as part of when they were going through the development process with planning and zoning, there were some concerns. I have not heard those specifically. That might be a better question for Mr. Fulton.
We held a public hearing for, I believe it was the Transportation Corridor Overlay District. As part of that, we mail notification to folks within 300 feet. We did receive 1 letter of opposition, but no one showed up at the hearing to voice any concerns.
I was actually surprised that they tore down the trees that was the buffer to the houses. Are they planning on,
That's why I asked.
As part of their application, they will be putting in a buffer along that northern property line.
yes, but we went from 30 to 40 to 50 to 60-foot trees to what? What's the requirement? Is it gonna be 6-foot trees? It'll take 20 years
6
to.
foot, off the top of my head, I don't know, but I know there's a fence involved and then some trees, I think at every 30 feet. So they are meeting the requirements per code for buffering along that northern property line.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Alan, on the restriping ordinance, is that paint or thermo that you're proposing?
The lane lines themselves, so the center lines and the edge lines will all be 642 paint. The transverse lines will be thermal.
Okay. Do they see any temperature issues? I mean, obviously, we're late in the year for this.
It doesn't seem so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
Was there any more thought to your single line on some of the roads that have absolutely nothing?
I wasn't trying to get that in this year. We'd already gone back and forth with the contractors trying to get pricing and get everything in there. So I didn't want to add that late in the game, knowing that we were coming up against temperature deadlines.
Next year, maybe?
Next year, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else for Al? Yes, sir.
Alan, is there any way on these lane shifts to ask the contractor to put up maybe some flashing lights on the barrels? The reason I ask is this morning, and it was pretty foggy this morning, but I was following an air conditioning service truck or something on Broad Street right out here, and he almost ran into the barrels. He was busy throwing trash out of his truck that he thinks he had purchased at the BP station, so maybe that was what distracted him. But it is a more dramatic shift than you might think, and if you don't travel that way, I mean, I go that way, I'm that way every day, so is there any way there, and then maybe down at the car wash, maybe to put just some flashing lights up or something, or those bunker lights on, I think you can fasten those onto the barrels,
Yeah.
maybe?
I'll definitely look into that. I think that's something we can do.
Just especially now since it's darker, obviously earlier, we're gonna have some foggy mornings, it's gonna be darker earlier, both morning and evening. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Did you make a citizen's arrest for littering?
No, I mean.
All right.
It didn't happen in Ward 3.
That is Ward 3, right? That is Ward 3. No, I did not. I was gonna put it on the video, and email it to the chief. I mean, I can't remember the name of the company.
You gotta be careful with road rage.
Yeah, well, Licking County's got a bad rep for road rage right now, so I'm trying to keep it low key. But he was very busy throwing the stuff he bought at the BP. That's where he pulled out. He pulled out right in front of me and then just tossed his wrappers and crap was coming out of his truck.
All right.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Mayor.
Anything
Thank you,
else
Mrs.
for Alan?
Carter.
You're welcome.
Anything else for Alan? Scott?
Thank you, Mayor. One item I'd like to highlight, and that's ordinance 2019-4341, that's Scenic View Estates. All the revisions were presented to Development Committee on September 24th. Development Committee made a recommendation upon including all the comments and a legal review that it proceed on to council for consideration. Currently, speaking with Mr. Zatz, getting the ordinance amended to reflect the process. Once we have that done, it should be ready for consideration on the 19th, so October 19th. On your dais, there should be the entire packet with the plans, development text, and HOA documents that have all been reviewed for council to review prior to the 19th. This way it kind of worked out that we have to get the legislation reviewed. That gives council plenty of time to take a look at the plans. Aside from that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anything for Scott? Yes, sir.
I had two things, Scott, on the Scenic View, did they address the comments that were provided on the last review?
Yes, they
Okay,
did.
so they took care of all those? and-
Everything is included, yes.
Cool. And the second question I had, in your report, you had made mention of our friends at the shopping center coming to Pataskala Mayor's Court. And I believe that last time I talked with you about this, you had said that they had opted to go to Licking County.
The applicant's attorney, or the property owner's attorney, entered a not guilty plea with Mayor's Court upstairs. So then the trial is going to be held in Mayor's Court. Is that the?
October 15th.
Is that what it is?
That's what you have on
Yeah,
your
so
report.
the trial will be held here.
Okay, good. I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Will we be selling popcorn and refreshments for that? Anything else for
bricks in the
Scott?
morning.
Yes, sir.
I didn't get a packet of the Scenic View Estates
I
packet.
will look into that. I put those down on everyone's desk. I wonder if we had a meeting in the interim. I will look into that.
I didn't get one either.
I got one, Scott. Thank you.
So some stuck around and some disappeared. Okay. Can, just as a show of hands, who didn't get it, just so I can print these out?
Or you can just email it to me.
The file's pretty large,
Not the mayor, though.
so I'll get that to you. Okay, so 2?
I have the capacity to accept large emails.
I just don't know if I have the ability to send large emails. I'll look
Oh,
into
okay.
it though.
All right.
Anything else for Scott? Lanier?
Thank you, Mayor. Got a couple things I want to highlight on my list. The Liberty Park project, where I think we're in the final stages of figuring out the next steps as to when I will amend the ODNR original submission from 2018. I believe our next step is Mr. Walters is going to reach out to the Licking County Board, Building Code, and really try to figure out if there is a way that we can get the shelter in just before we reach that deadline to appeal. But we're hoping that we can move forward, but if we are not, I will amend the project and we will add furnishings, we will also add trash cans, we will also add the extension of the parking lot into the grant, that way we can get the full allocation of the ODNR Nature Works grant, which is a total of $68,579. But overall, with some of the pictures that I sent you, if you haven't went to the park yet, we actually added the fencing in on Friday. It looks great. The park is coming along very well, so whether we have the shelter in there or not, it's gonna look good. I got a picture from the, I guess, old HOA president just on Thursday night, I believe it was, and he sent me a picture of a group of kids playing in the field, playing baseball. So it's nice to see that the park is being used at all capacities at this time. Next thing on my list, over the last 2 weeks, we've been working at the pool. We're finalizing the painting this week with the weather increasing a little bit with the temperatures. We're hoping to have everything solidified by next week with winterizing and things like that. So the pool is coming to an end in terms of post-pool season work. And finally, September 1st, I was reached out by the Amazon, I guess the DC 5 over here off of Refugee and Mink Road. Their manager reached out, wanted to partner and wanted to collaborate on some things, and she had me send her, I guess, my whole repertoire. So I sent her everything I had at her just to get a feel for what they were willing to do. She reached out to me late last week and mentioned that they would like to partner with our, I guess, new program that we're going to start next year, our Technology or Esports Club program, and they're looking to give us between $10,000 and $15,000 yearly as a part of that program and sustain it as one of their own. So within a partnership between the YMCA, Tech R2, which is our local tech company within the city, and Amazon, I believe the program can and will continue to grow, and I'm hoping to get it started next year. Aside from that, I don't have any questions.
Anything for Lanier? Awesome.
Mr. Clark, I really appreciate you giving me your report. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It makes me feel well, it makes you feel like, being able to be a part of that.
Chief Brooks, what do you got for us?
Just one quick item. Earlier you asked about the two B&Es, the Dairy Hut and the hardware store, and then all the car break-ins. We actually just got a confession from a kid since after the meeting started. So turns out it was one of the same kids that did the Subway and Rusty's earlier in the summer.
When they were already out on the street? Okay, so
See, for the juveniles, did you say, or?
Juvenile.
Juveniles, no.
And that's all I have.
Yeah, good work. That was quick, and I know my Lions Club is also happy that although we're discussing how we're going to deal with those juveniles, I think we may ask for some community service so they can see how a Lions Club works and serves that community. So we'll work on that. But nice work there too. Also, anything for Bruce? Yes.
Some communities have this is purely an optional program. I don't know if we do, maybe we do, I'm just not aware of it. Do we have an optional program for mayor's court where we can divert kids out of juvenile court if it's appropriate? Obviously, if it's appropriate into community service programs.
We do have diversion and community
I'm talking
service.
about juveniles. The mayor's court has no jurisdiction over juveniles.
Oh, okay.
No jurisdiction. This is optional. The kid has to opt into it. Do we have anything like that?
I actually do work with Licking County. There's
Okay.
only a few departments that do, but
Okay.
I'm one of them, and
Okay.
so I've done that for years just to.
Right. And I'm not suggesting this is an appropriate one, but it just made me think of where it's appropriate, where the youth is appropriate for that type of program. So we do have that divert them out of going over to Newark for formal juvenile court stuff.
Yeah, they just changed directors that
Right.
oversees that program, so,
Right.
but yeah, we're gonna get back into
Good.
it.
Okay, thanks. I'm just curious. Thanks, guys.
Committee chair reports. Mrs. Carter.
We had a street committee meeting this evening, primarily talked about the, legislation for the impact fees eventually coming up. So we hit through a couple chapters, looking through Pickerington's, ordinance, kind of picking it apart, seeing what fits, what doesn't. Some things that Alan's gonna look into, Alan and Brian both are gonna look into, as far as questions. And I think that, our plan is to wrap it up in about 3 meetings, so we're gonna hit the second section of those in 2 weeks. And then, so hopefully November timeframe to be able to come to council with something.
So 2 more meetings after this one, just the 3 meetings.
Correct,
and
three
we'll
meetings
start to-
total. Yep.
Good. Yes, sir.
Yeah, real brief, development committee report. We met, I forget, I think on the 25th, 28th. Regarding scenic view, we did look at that, and we did pass a recommendation to council with the understanding that the changes that Scott spoke of were correct. So we were in favor of that, 3-0 with those changes. You'll see that next week, hopefully. So just want to let you know that we did pass that recommendation, and we kept plugging along on the comprehensive plan, and I'm hopeful 2 more meetings. I think we can do it in 2 meetings.
Very good. Anything else? Yes, sir.
I just want to add one thing that I neglected in my report. We are broadcasting with the new camera tonight. You can see it at the back there. It should be a much higher quality video. Also, be careful, not that anybody would not have a problem, but the new system also picks up every little thing from the microphones. So, coughing away from the microphones or sidebar, we shouldn't have sidebar conversations anyway. But other instances, just be careful.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, unfinished business, ordinance 2020-4370 for a 3rd reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Everson, seconded by Mr. Walters. Kathy, when you're ready, 3rd reading.
Ordinance 2020-4370, this is the 3rd reading, an ordinance to approve current replacement pages to the Pataskla codified ordinances.
Discussion? Mr. Barstow?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we, could you just call on somebody else, please?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
I need a motion to adopt, please.
Mayor.
Yes,
Motion
ma'am.
we adopt ordinance 2020-4370.
Have a motion by Mrs. Carter to adopt 2020-4370. Need a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Walther. Discussion? And roll.
Epperson,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter.
Yes.
Ordinance passes. Ordinance 2020-4373 for a third reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Carter. Kathy, when you're ready, third reading, please.
Ordinance 2020-4373, this is the third reading, an ordinance to make supplemental appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020.
Discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
is there discussion? No? Okay. Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt ordinance 2020-4373.
Got a motion to adopt, Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion? And roll, please.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Epperson,
Yes.
Barstow.
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance passes. New business. Would you check real quick, Scott?
I think Mr. Hicken is.
Oh, okay, very good. We'll see if there's any additional citizens' comments, which there are none. Thank you, sir. Mr. Barstow, what do you got for me?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that we go into executive session pursuant to revised code section 121.22G3 to conference with an attorney for the city concerning a dispute involving the city that is the subject of pending litigation. Invited into this executive session are Mayor Compton, Tim Hicken, the city administrator, Alan Haynes, director of public services, Brian Zetz, law director, and Scott Fulton, planning director.
Second.
Got a motion and a second by Mrs. Carter. Discussion? And roll.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Epperson,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hampshire.
Yes.
Okay. Executive session is, we're gonna do the other one too, or?
Yeah, we'll do the other one now. We also we're going to, following that executive session, I move that we stay in executive session pursuant to section 121.22G1 to consider the compensation of a public employee. Invited into that executive session are Mayor Compton and Brian Zetz, law director, and we will excuse the other people from the first executive session.
Got a motion for a second executive session, seconded by Mr. Lee. Discussion? And roll.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Epperson,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Okay, executive session at 8:03, and we're heading upstairs.
Are Kathy entertained?
Good, that's what I do. I
Oh,
was doing
we're
a dance
gone?
down here.
Mr. Hicken? Yes, sir. How are you? Fine.
So excited to go back to school.
Aren't you guys starting up again? Or back? Hybrid this week? Was it next week?
Need a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Carter, seconded by Mr. Barstow. Kathy, when you're ready.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Epperson,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Okay, out of executive session at 9:40, and I'm sure the record reflected you came down and on the first executive session and told Kathy when we were out of that one, so. All right, we'll go, roundy round, start with Mr. Epperson,
I have nothing there.
Mrs. Carter.
I have nothing, sir.
Is it okay if I call you Mrs. Carter? Did you want me to call you something else other than?
Very good.
I don't know what else you would want to call me.
Mr. Barstow, well,
Nothing, sir.
it took me long enough from the other name you had, Mrs. Gibson, so.
Did we lock someone out?
Mr. Gaelic,
Nothing there.
Mr. Zetz,
A few things, no, I'm just kidding.
Mr. Walter.
Yeah, I'd like to make an announcement for the utility committee meeting, October 14th at 5 p.m. Kathy, we have anything that open?
that was October 14th.
October 14th at 5.
Anything else?
Nothing else.
Judy?
Just one thing, my son completed everything on his Eagle. He has one final small step, his board of review on October 15th, and then I will be the proud parent of 3 Eagle Scouts.
Mr. Lee?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I will
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. Lee, seconded by leadership.
Retired leadership.
Kathy, roll please.
Walter,
Yes.
Jefferson,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.
Please put your chairs down.
And please continue to work on your evaluations.
Oh, sir.
don't-
About that.
Mrs. Carter and Mr. Lee, the last two.
I think I owe you one too. I owe
You
you
know what?
one.
Where are? I thought, Wayne, I thought you didn't want to do them. If they're personnel evaluations.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
that's okay, yeah, it's okay.
No.
If you do, that's fine.
Tom,
Okay.
can you do me a favor and email me
Same for me
them
too.
so I can type them?
Okay.